Jack, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. So, as part of the Scale Up series, we're going to be having a conversation about, I guess, like performance, marketing, growth, kind of attribution, but actually managing your performance marketing or marketing investments from the P&L.
Yep.
Which to me sounds like really good best practice, a very sensible idea, but is it easier said than done in practice?
That's not many people do it.
No,
in my experience. So,
but it feels like the right thing to do. So why is that? So we're going to really dig into that today. But first off, who are you? What do you do? How did you end up working in growth marketing for an e-commerce brand? Well, Pooch Mutt.
Sure. So I'm Jack, head of growth at Pooch Mutt currently. I've been in marketing for about 5 years next month, and which makes me, I don't know if that's a long time in the marketing game. Everyone seems quite young, so maybe 5 years does make me a bit old, but I always think I'm learning something new every day, so it still feels like a new career. I actually started out as something called a geographic information systems analyst, which sounds very boring and turns out was very boring, at least to me, in my sort of mindset. So I looked for other roles pretty quickly after starting, and there was a job opening for a marketing executive at the AA. And luckily, the guy there was really willing to take a chance on me. He saw I just knew data really well. So he said, come and help me run my PPC, which obviously is a very data-driven thing. But to me, I had no idea what it involved. So I joined and just had to learn very quickly. And as the couple of years went on, learned all about PPC, but also paid social, a little bit about SEO, and saw a job opening come up for a biddable manager at Pooch Mutt. And I've always wanted to work at a startup. It always seemed really exciting and glamorous to me from the outside. I mean, it is on the inside as well, a little bit. So I joined, and I've been at Pooch Mutt for about 2.5 years now, and obviously grew from a biddable manager into a head of growth, which has been a really exciting journey. And like I said, I learn so much every day, and all of the stuff we're going to talk about today in terms of the P&L is something I've really developed over the last 6 months or so. So still very much learning about it, but coming at it, open-minded and just trying to absorb as much information as I can, and obviously talk about it with people because I think it's really interesting.
Fast forward a bit to Pooch Mutt and head of growth and this notion of managing performance or managing your performance marketing investment on the P&L. Give us an overview as to what that looks like or what you mean by that.
So I would say it's a good question. I think marketing with the P&L in mind basically means knowing your numbers inside out across the board. So it moves you beyond from just being given a marketing budget and a target and just having to deal with that versus actually taking some ownership and pushing to get the insights for the rest of the business and how that impacts your area. So, for example, in D2C, there are always going to be logistical costs. There's always going to be warehousing costs, distribution costs, delivery costs. There's going to be your cost of goods, for most of your products. And D2C famously has a problem with profitability. So there are many, many D2C companies that have grown to absolute behemoths of companies, and they're still not profitable. And I'm not a financial person. I will never quite understand how that's possible and how that's allowed. But I think for the last 5 years, there's been a real push for D2C companies to show, no, we can do this profitably. We can actually we're not just a channel, we're a full-on business, a full-on P&L. We can pay for ourselves, we can pay for all of our staff, and we can actually deliver money and profitable growth for the business. So having the P&L in mind just means knowing exactly how profitable you are. So all these metrics like gross profit, free contribution, the EBITDA, profit on the bottom line, however deep you want to go into it, but actually speaking the language that your managing director or investors or owners, the ones that they speak, and you don't need a translator in the middle, right? You can go in, you can have that conversation. And a big part of it for us, which we'll probably lead on to, is building your own budgets as well. So not just saying, again, please give me this money because I want to go and spend it. It's saying, if you give us this, we'll deliver this, and that equals this. And you've got all of the metrics that they're looking at, all the things all the metrics that they're going to be reporting on to the city or to the board or their owners or whoever it is. And you have that ownership to say, actually, this is what our budget should be. Now, there'll always be a negotiation in that. Obviously,
Yep.
Your director or owner will have a vision of where they want it to be. And it's not about dragging them to somewhere else, but it's about nudging them, and it's a negotiation and bringing it more into the middle of what you know you can achieve as a team, but also what you need to be able to do that.
How do you balance or manage margins? So let's say, for example, you're running through a month, and well, for many e-com businesses, the summer's a bit quiet, right? So you're in a bit of a quiet phase, and 1 week's good, 1 week's bad, next week's good, next week's bad, and business is never a flat line, right? So let's say you're coming into a week, you know it might be a bit slow, you're predicting a bit of a poor week for whatever reason. Do you then go, right, we're going to dial the budget back and we're going to still try and make sure we maintain a, 10% net margin? That's non-negotiable. Or do you go, well, actually, no, let's keep the spend up, sacrifice the margin this week, knowing that it's probably going to come back and balance itself out next week? Like, how do you
It's hard.
balance that?
At least you're having the conversation. So that's the key thing is, some of it will obviously be like me, and I'll sat there and I'll come up with my view, but there'll also be other people in the team who have their view, or my manager who might have a different view. But the important thing is that you know the impact and you know what's going to happen. You mentioned knowing summer's a quiet period. Well, that's great for us because it means that when we go to budget our next year and when we're telling the business this is what we think we're going to deliver on a weekly level, we can take that into account. So most of business and marketing is all about just expectation setting and meeting or missing.
Yeah.
That there is no actual laws of nature when it comes to this stuff. So it's, well, if the business knows that summer's going to be quiet, we've maybe reduced our targets slightly or our growth ambitions for those months, and then we report on it. When that inevitably then does happen, everyone goes, cool, looks good. That's what we're expecting. Looking forward to Q4 when, we start to ramp up again.
Yep.
So I think that budget, the really, really important thing is definitely having that ownership in the budget build to begin with. So before you even start your year, everyone, you're already more confident in what you can deliver because you've sat there we sit there for days and days really building it and know, well, my confidence level in that budget is actually really high. And I know that if I deliver it, the business will be happy. If I over deliver, even better. But it means that things will always go wrong. Things will, like you said, it's not a flat line. It'll mess up, but at least everyone's on the same page. Everyone's got the same data and everyone can understand the decisions that are then made in regards to that. And what it does, I think, is really help manage a lot of the challenges I hear other businesses have of non-marketing, maybe more financial people constantly coming in and questioning things and challenging kind of unhelpfully, especially if they don't know it that well. Yeah, I think there can be very helpful challenges and very valid challenges from finance people, but I feel like the locking heads of finance and marketing people goes all the way to the top and always has done in the biggest companies and the smallest companies. So it's just, how do you navigate that, not conflict, but that debate in the healthiest way possible?
And if you're all starting on the same page, that obviously makes quite a big difference to that conversation.
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
That's really cool. Let's say you went into a role and clearly this is a really good way of managing it. What would your first step be towards getting to that point if there was a bit of resistance or nervousness around moving to that way of measuring?
I think you obviously need to go into a company that has some level of... Some people they're just not going to want to do it for whatever reason, egotistical reasons, but they're just going to say, no, you can't see it. And I think that's just the wrong business to be in, to be honest, because you're never going to figure that out really. So you have to go to a business that's at least somewhat willing to try. And then it's just about challenging constantly and saying, well, what is wrong about the most newest junior exec seeing exactly how profitable we are at the end of the day? Like, what's genuinely wrong with that? Like, what are you scared of? If you can give me a legitimate reason, then let's work on how we can find a way around that rather than just assuming it's a problem. But the key thing is that I don't think there really is any legitimate challenge to that democratization. There can be there might be a process that needs to be built in terms of the sharing of the document or upskilling maybe certain people just to know how to talk about it. But actually, there's no genuine reason that I have seen or can think of why that can't be done in any business, unless there's, I don't know, this is where maybe my naivety is like there's some financial institutions that genuinely can't share things like that. But I think for most, especially D2C businesses, startups, scale-ups, things at that level, it's just important that everyone knows.
I think there should always be a view.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
even if it's like, how does your spend fit in with the overall picture, or
Yeah.
you know, there should always be a view. I think.
you get some challenges obviously from maybe individual teams or channel people where they might say, well, I think that I can spend that money more effectively than someone else. But I think that's a sort of debate that we encourage with, because that competition is always there. You know, it's always under the surface anyway, whereas I think channel people are competitive. Everyone wants their channels to be the best, and that's a good thing in the sense of encouraging people. But it's also about saying, like, this is where attribution comes in, right? And as long as you go some way into trying to find a bit of a single view that everyone has some confidence in, then you are able to challenge each other and say, that does seem like an incredibly high CAC that you've got over there. I'm topped out on my budget, but I think actually there's some opportunity here. So I think we should be playing with our budgets a bit differently. But that's for someone like me to manage with my team, I think, and talk to them. And all the channel people, they contribute to the budget as well. So when we're saying all channel targets for next year, it's something we work on together. They'll never not be a part of that process.
That's so good. It's so open and transparent.
Yeah. And again, I can't see any...
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
No, I love it. Excellent. Look, Jack, thank you so much for joining, and that was a really interesting discussion, and I'm sure everyone listening found that interesting as well. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Cheers.